What is up, my Lorcana Goons, and welcome back to the Lorcana Goons channel. We are back with the Quest with a Guest podcast, and Zach is joining us this time because he is not feeling as under the weather. This week's guest, we are joined by Saucy, aka Connor Albury, who is not only an admin in our Discord, one of the first to join the Lorcana Goons Discord, but has been helping the Lorcana Goons community out a lot. We met at a couple DLCs before. I believe it was DLC Vegas, and you had a pretty good run at DLC Seattle, right? Finishing with a Let It Go, but you did have a specific kind of mishap happen to you, which we'll get into in a sec. But I would love to introduce Saucy to the Lorcana Goons community. How you doing, man?
Doing great, doing great. Appreciate y'all for having me.
One of the first Lorcana Goons in the Discord and has been helping the community out a lot. It's been a blast meeting you and meeting a lot of the other members of the Lorcana Goons community. Seattle was cool, man. I feel like this is a great time to talk about our experience. It was a 2-game format. We were in the Shimmering Skies format, and there was a lot of variance. But even outside the tournament, I think we had a good time. We got to hang out, get some dinner.
I mean, we'll get into it in a bit. I think it was one of the very few people that had a technical day 2 record, but wasn't in day 2. And so I figure we'll dive into that in a bit. But other than that, I mean, Seattle had great food, had just an overall great time being able to see everybody. The atmosphere at DLCs compared to any other card game event that I've been to has honestly been unmatched from an energy perspective and just like the overall welcoming community. And so, yeah, it was just a great time overall.
What about you, Zach? How did you enjoy the weekend?
You know, I had honestly a very fun time. Like high school reunions is how I kind of think of these events, right? And this one was really like unique because we had some people that from other previous card game communities kind of show up to this event as their first DLC, and it was awesome to be able to like reconnect with some friends and see some people I haven't seen before. Shout outs to some special content creators. I don't want to name any names, but everyone was super awesome and pleasant, and really like thank you to anyone that came up and said hi to Kevin and I, because it's very like it means a lot. We never really realize like the impact we make until we go to these events, because so many people are willing to like share their stories of cards they've bought when they were cheap and now with the prices where they're at, and everything about the competitive side of the game too, that we love to hear people's like bad beat stories or top deck stories. And I know Saucy's got a few of them for us today.
Yeah, so Saucy, you did play Amber Steel in the main event. It's the same as Zach. So we have some Amber Steel goons over here. And you mentioned that you had a record that normally puts you into day 2, but you did not make day 2. So what exactly was your record?
Yeah, so my record after concluding day 1 was 6-1-2, which anyone that's familiar with the point scoring for 2-game format is, assumedly that's a day 2 record, right? Ending you at, I believe that's 48 points, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, one of those technical wins was a 1-0 win instead of a 2-0 win. And that unfortunately was the lack of points. So even though it showed up in the record as 6-1-2, it's more like it was 5-1-3, which is just shy of making it. But I mean, we ended up with one of these bad boys. So, I mean, based on everything that happened over the weekend, really can't complain too much.
Yeah, so basically you get 7 points for 2-0ing your opponent, and you get 3 points for winning game 1. And if time gets called and there's only one game that's won and the second game hasn't won, if that second game doesn't complete, then nobody gets that extra third point plus bonus point, right? I've had scenarios like this too, where I've won game 1, game 2, time is called. This happened at the Vegas DLC. And honestly, like I didn't know who was gonna win that game 2, but neither of us were necessarily in a position to really call who would have won. But if we just left it at that, then I get 3 points and my opponent gets 0 points. So I just ended up conceding the second game, giving my opponent his 3 points as well, because I couldn't beat him, but he also showed me he couldn't beat me. And at the end of the day, if I would have left it at that, he would have gotten 0. I still would have gotten 3. I don't benefit anything from that. And some people don't do that though. The 2-game format can be a little confusing, I think, for some people who experience like their first DLC, or even in general this is like a new format for card games in general. So when you start adding up those points and kind of figuring out where am I going to end up by round 9, it does get a little confusing. And that is one of my issues with the 2-game format. It does feel like sometimes you are playing the tournament rather than playing the game. And there are those scenarios that happen like that where like if I didn't know the tournament system, maybe I think that I'm gonna take the win, by not conceding. So some people might just be like, no, I don't want to concede, but that doesn't change anything. And I remember when I did concede, my opponent was like really grateful, and I like obviously like I let him know like, yeah, I understand how the tournament system works, like I don't get anything from you not winning, so I might as well just scoop. But again, it's also one of those things where you can't expect people to do that for you because they just might not know. And then quite frankly, I've seen people who do know and still say no, I'm not going to do that for you because they just want to be mean maybe. Zach, you told me this story about like somebody saying no, I don't want you to let it go. That was kind of wild. That happened this weekend, right?
So I heard this through, and then correct me if I'm wrong. Sailor was resharing the story where um, I think it was a friend of his playing against another opponent, who both happened to be women, and they had a long game one, and game two pops up, and I think it may have went into time, and a 7 point win for either of them gets them the Let It Go promo. It doesn't get them into day two, and it's the last round of Swiss. So the opponent that was down a game looked at their opponent, and again, correct me if I'm wrong because I was only told this story through someone else. They looked at their opponent in the face and said, "You are not getting your Let It Go promo. I am not going to scoop the game to you." And it felt very like it felt very intentional. And the one phrase that kept coming up was "misery loves company," and it's unfortunate, but the two-game format can bring the best and the worst out of people from my perspective. And
Yeah.
it's so you know I'd love for it to not be like that, but I think at the end of the day, self-preservation is a human trait, and we're just trying to look out for ourselves and get something for ourselves at the end of the day. So people will, um, you know, again, ask and get that leverage. I'm pretty sure the line was, I can concede game two if I lose game one because I'm looking to 2-0 everyone from here. And it's a good precedent to set. So it's another topic that Kevin and I will have on another future day. But it's funny that the two-game format is the reason why this exists. And if it wasn't a two-game format, none of this would be happening.
Yeah, like I think what was meant to fix something as simple as the dice roll is now becoming just tournament playing the tournament. We're thinking people are thinking about more things than just the card game. We're thinking a little too much about the
Right.
tournament now, and I think that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Because I mean, we also see this applying. Like, I recently just was watching like Zansayed's podcast where he talked about it, where you start out with, I believe it was 3 draws and 1 win, one or 2 draws, 2 wins, like 1 loss, and it's just like cool. I'm playing best of one. I'm playing the one game, and for the most part, you'd see a lot of people just being like, "I'm not gonna concede," and like you see people on both sides of the spectrum on this. Where thankfully, going into my last round, where my record was basically on that winning and streak, and then I ended up splitting twice, and was just like, "Cool." The most I could do is get a let it go. Thankfully, when I sat across from my opponent, we both had just a mutual understanding. Where as soon as I sat down, was just like, "Hey, before we even roll the dice, want to let you know if I lose game one, I'm going to concede," and just being able to leave it at that. And thankfully, my opponent shared the same response. He was just like, "Yeah, cool. I'm in the same boat, man. Let's just play it out, see what happens." And then, thankfully, even though I was on the draw, I ended up getting game one, and we we were able to secure the let it go. But yeah, the two-game format definitely makes things very interesting at the end of the day because like if it came down to that 1-0 scenario in best of three, right? I mean, if it goes second game goes into a draw, then technically the person who got game one is winning that match, right? Instead of it coming down to being like this weird 1-0 win scenario. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Ravensburger chooses to do moving forward with it.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I personally enjoy the two-game format, but it's
Yeah.
the only reason. The only reason why I like it is literally because I don't have to stay like 12 plus hours playing over like a regional tournament. Oh, and plus I have time in between rounds to go to the bathroom, go drink water. That is like so important to me. And to be honest, like a lot of card game players don't play fast. People take really long playing the game sometimes, and that two-game format gives you the ability to do that. But in a three-game format, it's really hard to not only like hold yourself accountable at your pace of play, but hold opponents accountable for their pace of play. And like I've been playing card games for a long time, so I already have a routine of what I like to do and say when I want to tell my opponent like, hey, can we speed up a little bit? But a lot of people don't know that. They don't have that experience. They don't know how to handle that. So when I set champs, for example, I see it all the time. People going into time in set champs and then just raging at the game when they can't get to 20 lore, but it's like, bro, how long did you take up until that point? Like, how slow were you playing up until that point? You got to take responsibility to an extent where it's like play at an appropriate pace from the start to the end of the game, and also remind your opponent to do the same. And one of the way I usually do it is like I'll verbally say, hey, we only have 10 minutes left on the clock. We're going into game 3. I'm going to play as fast as I can. I don't even tell my opponent play faster. I say what I'm going to do, right, to pick up the pace. And then that's all I can do, because at the end of the day, there are people who play the tournament and decide, you know what, I don't want to lose. I'm gonna play as fast as I want, right? But that's my biggest issue with obviously best of 3 as opposed to best of 2. And when in the 2 game format, I've never experienced that. I've gone into time only once at one DLC, and it was that time I just mentioned, and it was green purple versus red purple, and both of us were just grinding game 1, and same thing, grinding back and forth game 2. So like it just felt like a good game of Lorcana anyways. Like it wasn't like any of us slow playing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I also felt very like, oh, like none of us won this second game, but like I'll concede this second game because I don't know who would have won this one, Um,
Yeah.
but like the 2 game format has its ups and downs. I am very curious to see what Ravensburg is gonna do about that in the future. I want you to tell me about your round 1 situation as well, Saucy.
Oh man, this is I've been pretty much sharing this story with everyone, just going over the full tournament report. But yeah, so I had the unfortunate circumstance of playing against the wrong person in my round 1 going
No.
into the start of DLC Seattle, and boy oh boy did my heart sink. It was just a roller coaster of emotion. So for anyone that's been to a DLC, you know that before the tournament actually starts, they have what's called the player meeting, which happens roughly about 30 minutes before, where they basically have the judges go around anyone that's not in their seat based on people being like tabled out like alphabetical order. They end up dropping them from the tournament. So it's kind of expected that going into round 1, your opponent should be at their table, right? And so we go through the player meeting, go into round 1, and feeling really good and feel good about my deck list, and go to sit across from who I thought was my opponent. I just got like the table number in my head, put my phone away, got to the table, saw that no one was sitting across from the person, and sat down, went through the normal conversation, just like, hey, how's it going? Where are you from? Etc. And I made the fatal mistake of not making sure my opponent was my opponent based on their melee name. And so we go through the match. I get it 2-0 and am feeling on top of the world, because being able to get that first win is just, it's a huge up going into a big event like this compared to splitting or, having the loss, right? And so I go to enter it in on Melee because my page hadn't refreshed. The signal in the convention center was pretty but I go to click my name twice, show it to my opponent, be like, yo, does this look correct? And then they're like, yep. And so I go to click submit, it freezes. And I was just like, okay, Melee being Melee, like it could be slow at times. And so I go to refresh the page, and then it then proceeds to show me I have been dropped from the tournament. And my heart drops because I have how in the world did this even happen? I thought I was at the right table. I felt really good about the win. Like yellow for a judge. And then they're like, okay, well, we don't know what's happening. So we go over to info desk, and I'm proceeded to be informed that I was supposed to be sitting 2 tables over, and that who I thought was my opponent ended up being the one with an actual no-show, which is why nobody came up and was just like, hey, think that you're at the wrong table. I'm supposed to be here, like people checking their flight seat numbers and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it was just really weird happenstance that, I just so happened to sit across from the one person who had a no-show. And so very weird how the stars aligned there. But, I was just like, can I at least get back into the tournament? Is there anything that can really be done about this? And person was super nice. He was just like, unfortunately, there's nothing else I could do about in terms of like the record standings, because your opponent ended up like reporting the no-show. They got it technically 2-0, and so now they gave the win to who I played against, who I 2-0'd. So I technically gave two people wins in the first round. And then they were like, we could get you back into the tournament, but you're going to have to start with a round 1 loss. And I was just like, oh, man, okay. And I was just like, well, here we go. Like, starting off with a loss, not where you want to be whatsoever, right? And from there, I mean, I had huge highlights where I proceeded to go 4-0 over the course of the next 4 rounds, and was just like, man, I would have been locked in for day 2 right now. Like, I would have
No.
been good on my tournament run, and it felt terrible. And then round 6 is when I hit the 1-0 win, which means technically would have been 5-0 going out of that. It was the only game that I went into time, and man, it was just brutal, because following that, I split the next 2 games and then got put into the best of 1 in the last round, which thankfully, like, based on everything else that happened, still ending up with a let it go is like, it's the best that I could ask for. At the end of the day, I was hoping it'd be like you had what happened round 1 and you still made day 2, but I mean, let it go is the next best thing. So
Hey man, round of applause though. You literally you're telling me your whole day you only dropped 2 games is what I'm hearing.
yeah, pretty much.
Just 2 games the whole day. And
Yeah, literally, in my mind, I was 7-0-2 going in, like, ending day 1. I would have been top seed in Swiss, and if anything, it gives me encouragement going into the future. Like, I want to be a person that keeps as much of a positive headspace as possible when it comes to these sorts of things, because it's just like, oh, if I got that round 1 win, maybe I get paired into like 3 Ruby Sapphires, and then my run just ends, right? Or it could be this, that, or the other. So things played out the way that they did. Still came home with a prize card at the end of the day. And while it would have been nice to make day 2, if anything, this event just showed me I have what it takes to be able to make it there. And then also, like, in terms of deck building knowledge, which I figure we'll dive into in a bit, I was only, I think, 4 cards off of the person who came in second with Amber Steel. Like, I was 4 cards off of his list, and that was out, like, without any prior knowledge as to, like, how I should be running it. And so that just, again, further confirms, like, I feel like I had the list to be able to take it all, because the text we'll dive into a little bit. But yeah, overall, I'm looking forward to next season. I'm beyond excited. I mean, Continentals will be happening, but man, when it comes to the next chain of DLCs or seeing what other events Ravensburger has in store for us, I'm just super stoked.
And honestly, I just want to give you like big props for maintaining that headspace, even though you go through what you go through. And it's really important to just remember to take it one game at a time. Losses happen, and sometimes they're in your control, and sometimes they're out of your control. There's only so much that you can do in your situation, right? Like, of course, you can look over the table numbers. Of course, you can ask your opponent the melee round. But like, to be able to do that and not acknowledge that the amount of excitement and adrenaline you had going into the round 1 of the DLC, how much you played and prepped, and how ready you were to start the game, all that's important to remember. Like, we're only human, and it's important. It's very much we're capable of making these mistakes that can cost us a lot. But I'm very proud of you for keeping that positive headspace throughout the whole time. And I was always checking in with you throughout the day. I was always finding out your record. I was just like, you told me you were 4-1. I'm like, oh, so you're 5-0. Got it. Yeah, you already day 2'd, but like they're making you do extra credit now.
Yeah, literally, like, oh man, I mean, it was definitely a huge highlight, because like you said, we were checking in, like, going into the end of each round, and I just remember coming up to you, like, at the end of each one, just being like, that's another 2-0, baby, that's another 2-0. Like, we're still running it, we're still able to try and make it. And yeah, I mean, it was still pretty much as good of a run as I could ask for, right? I mean, to what you said, Kevin, really only dropping like 2 games, because looking back on that round 6, I was going up against Ruby Sapphire. I got the game 1. Game 2, he was down to, I think, like 8 cards left in his deck when we were going into time. And I had 1 whole new world left that was like 2 cards from the top. And I'm not fully certain looking back on it, but I'm almost fairly certain that he was out of Tamatoas to be able to try and hit dimes, and I had a bare necessities. And so if it came down to it, I think I had the match. But again, it's one of those unfortunate circumstances where it's just like, who knows? Who knows what would have actually happened? Like when you have three judges kind of looming around you and like the pressure's just there. Because I know that people had mentioned to me like, oh, you could technically ask your opponent to concede, but you can't just offer anything for it. And I was just like, I wasn't trying to risk that technicality where,
Yeah,
like
I get what you're saying. There's a lot of like I don't know, like wishy-washy like things that you can and can't do. So it's not even worth the risking half the time. And like obviously you don't what you don't want to do is pressure someone into doing something that they're uncomfortable with. You know what I mean?
exactly.
And I'd like to think, and I know we had this conversation too. I'd like to think that your opponent just didn't know exactly what was going on, and there's pressure there.
Yeah.
And same thing, he probably also felt uncomfortable with judges watching. But yeah, like
Yeah.
when my scenario, I looked at the judge and asked my judge, I'm allowed to concede whenever I want, right? Like there's no, I don't get in trouble for doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like an awesome record, like awesome showing. I really appreciate you representing the Lorcana Goons community and the Goon Squad and doing so well, and also just treating people with respect because I could tell that that could be a frustrating day. And I really appreciate that you wanted to keep a Sorry, one second, I'm getting a call. Okay, but
You appreciate him being like having a positive headspace.
yeah, having a positive. Yeah, there you go. Appreciate you having a very positive headspace in the tournament scene. I think it's kind of hard to not get tilted sometimes. Losing is part of playing trading card games, learning how to lose, knowing how to lose, especially in a 9 round of Swiss tournament. It feels bad when you lose. I was 3-0, like 3-0-1, and then I got 2-0'd, and I was like, no, it just completely like put me in an awkward position. And exactly like you said, it unfortunately put me in a position where every single match after that, either me or my opponent said, if I lose game one, I'm conceding game two. And I had some people not tell me that. So I was like, okay, I got to 2-0 you then. And I still did. But, it's still one of those things where you're putting yourself in those positions. And it's those conversations that don't need to, that it takes away from the actual gameplay itself. But that's besides the point. Awesome weekend from the Goon Squad. I really appreciate the way it went down. Let's go ahead and get onto your Amber Steel. Your Amber Steel deck, man. So you
Yeah.
said that it was about 4 cards off. I'm assuming it's the Queen. And what else are we missing from this?
No, so I believe in terms of the deck list, the only differences between mine and the second place list, we were both on the Queen package. It was only the difference of, I think they were on 2 Baloo, 2 Gaston, and I was on 2 Sven, 2 Big Cindy, was like the 4 cards. At least that I could remember off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, so you did play Queen as well, just like the same way the winner did. Okay. So
Exactly.
I do want to ask why Queen instead of something like Robin Hood.
Dude, and I've been telling people about this as well. I stayed up until probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, trying to figure out like, oh, am I playing Queen package or am I playing Robin Hood package? And ultimately, when it came down to the end of it, I just started running test hands and basically trying to simulate the thought like, okay, if I have Queen in this situation versus Robin Hood in this situation, what ends up being better? And what I came to find out, and this is like more so Yu-Gi-Oh mentality, when you're trying to just think of how your plays turn out when you go uninterrupted. The deck going through like 10 different test hands was pretty much consistently by turn 4 going on turn 5 or 5 going on 6 presenting lethal, and 8 out of those 10 times it didn't matter if it was Queen or Robin Hood, because when we're looking at it, you hit Daisy, you hit Smee, you hit Lawrence, you hit Sven, Naveen, Rapunzel, you hit like any of your 4 drops. Basically, if you're hitting that curve where you just have multiple 2-questers, your deck just goes too fast sometimes, man. Like my game that I got against Ruby Sapphire, where I got game 1 going on the play, I dropped Daisy, Smee, Daisy, Smee, and they were just like, I don't know what I could do. Like I was at 15 by like turn 3, turn 4 or something, and they were just like, yeah, I don't know what I could do about this. And so being able to look at it, I mean, yeah, the curve was just there, and so Queen came up in the 2 circumstances where it actually mattered, and Queen was always just more explosive. If it came down to it, like turn 2 wheel, being able to, like when you're thinking about drawing something off the top, right? If your deck goes into top deck mode, which I'm thankful to say like the deck ran smooth as butter. Like I only went into top deck mode twice in the tournament, and those 2 times were the times I split. Like those are the only 2 games that I dropped, and so the deck ran perfectly well. But when you're thinking about those top deck instances, especially going into like Ruby Amethyst matchup, right? If I top deck a queen, then cool, that sits on the board. If I top deck a Robin Hood, oh, they have Medusa, they have B prep, they have more outs technically versus playing the queen, because then it's just like cool, you either have B prep, or if you're running Mal Dragon, then sure. Like not that any Ruby Amethyst players are really on Mal Dragon at this point, at least that I've seen. I've never been huge on Ruby Amethyst myself, but yeah, overall queen, like I was just super back and forth on it up until like the last minute, basically, with trying to get at least some sleep going into it the night before. And I'm very content with playing it, because I would say that it honestly won me a lot of games. Like it won me my round 9 because I was playing against Emerald Steel. We agreed to the best, like gentleman's agreement for the best of one. He ends up winning the dice roll, so he's on the play. I'm on the draw, and then he inks a card, passes, and I was just like, okay, because I had queen, shift queen, and let the storm rage on, and was just like, I'm big chilling. So I go turn 1 play queen, he goes turn 2 play morph, and I was just like, okay, this isn't the bag now, because I go shift queen, sing let the storm rage on, and then I draw into another storm off of that, and then he goes turn 3 hard cast Diablo, and I'm just like, bro, it's over. It's just like I got my let it go. Cool. But no, I mean my round 9 opponent, he was a great guy. But yeah, unfortunate opening for him for the most part. But yeah, Queen just always led to so many more explosive plays that, like, in terms of the lines that you would have, was it always just felt better than Robin Hood. And I think pretty much most of the Steel Song players are in agreement with that at this point.
I can see that. I'd like to agree in the sense of what you mentioned, comparing it to Robin Hood. The force strength is really, really impactful, especially when you see a bunch of red blue in the format and Ruby Amethyst in the format, Medusa or even Medusa Ice Block already, or like they need Medusa Ice Block to hit the queen, and if they're playing red, and they don't have Ice Block in their deck, then Medusa's not gonna contest that. Force strength is hard to contest in Lorcana, and if you're aiming for those 2 questers to stick on board, then I think Queen is the one that makes more sense, especially if you can shift it only for 2. Sing Storm Rage on that tempo swing is insane by turn 2, so that alone is really good. And shout out the Smorkana people. I think believe Smorkana Katie, so I played round 4 or round 3, and she same thing at one point went like Daisy Smee and then like Daisy Smee. It's too much. It's too much for almost any deck to
It
handle.
was fast. It was
Yeah,
very fast.
gotta go fast. Got to go fast. Zach,
Gotta go fast.
what do you feel about how do you feel about Saucy's deck list? I know you also played Amber Steel for that event.
So Saucy's list was pretty much like if I were to opt out of playing like Chen Pos and Nalas, I would probably find myself playing the Queen package over the Robin Hood. I've always like told Kevin plenty of times like Whole New World disrupts the mulligan, and you can only play Whole New World on turn 2 with Queen. And if you have that against Ruby Sapphire, you can absolutely wreck them. They're going to keep cards like Popsicle, Tipo, or
Flavor
One Jump
Sham,
and Hyra,
Fishbone.
and all they're going to do is draw a card off Popsicle, and then they're going to look at 7 new cards that could just be unplayable cards. They could also just be playable cards too. You never really know. But you disrupting their mulligan is very important because they are planning their turns out, and now they have to completely adjust. They have to have a whole new game plan in mind. They have to think about it, and you can catch those more inexperienced players off guard because they're not able to adjust based on their new hand, and they're not able to make those assumptions based on what the position you put them into. And I know you opted to play the Big Cindy, which I kind of felt like was not the best into the meta. However, I understand that challenging readied characters is pretty crucial. You don't have AoE removal like Grab Your Sword, which isn't even that good against Green Steel, in my opinion, anyway. It can catch them off guard, but personally, the Big Cindy just didn't make my list because of the options of me wanting to play like Chen Pos and the extra Gastons.
Yep.
I really liked where I found my card choices. I really like where my deck list ended up settling. For any of
Yeah.
those that are curious, I did make a post on my Twitter, so please check that out. However, the same aggro lineup, I think we both agreed on, like Daisy, Smee, Lawrence is just automatic 4-ofs in the deck. You have to include your aerials. You have to include all those singers like Cindy, Ursula. I think it's also very important to recognize. I think you were guys that were on like 3 Zeus. Sean and you were on 3 Zeus. I would have liked to seen 4 Zeus in your list. Personally, Zeus has been the best card in my experience playing the game, and I don't think it would have been like a difference in like any of my draws, because I did like draw a couple Zeuses that I couldn't play right away. But even then, there's just having the removal, like even hard casting Zeus when you have Daisy, Smee, Lawrence in play is so impactful against like anything non-Ruby. So I pretty much like only would have wanted to see a 4th Zeus in your list. Other than that, your deck list was perfect. Like I think the big cities are fine. If you like the card and if it fits more of your play style, then go ahead. It's not something that I found myself wanting to play. Chenpo overperformed, and I think like I like the way my list turned out a lot better. Who knows though? Like you said, there's a lot of variance in this game too, and you can't really predict what cards are going to be better for you based on the matchups you may or may not play. I had to queue to 3 red blues during Swiss, and I managed to snake a 2-0 against one of them, get 2-0 against one, and split. Throughout my side events, I did 2-0 3 other red blues. So I had a decent like win rate against that deck, and I pretty much had to thank like the aggro lineup for that. If you weren't playing
Yep.
like your Daisies, your Smees, your Lawrences, some people played Piglet, and I think that was the whole point of me. The reason why I didn't play Piglet was it's only for the red blue matchup. It doesn't
Yep.
do anything against anything else. Like Steel, it's
Yeah,
just bad,
it gets hit by steel way too easily.
but it's inkable. So that's the best
Yeah,
part.
also.
Piglet go
But
crazy, but
no,
yeah, I get what you're saying. Personally, yeah, the Piglet just dies to anything that isn't a steel or that is
yeah,
steel.
dude, it's funny that you mention it with the Big Cindy though, because the Big Cindy is actually what won me in game 1 against the Ruby Sapphire player, because it got to the point where he was just wiping my board and I was on 17 and he was hitting visions to try and progress his game state with trying to be like, I don't think that he has it. And I have end up having a Big Cindy in my hand. I top deck a second Big Cindy, and then I just go for like I was at 7 ink, so I just go for hard casting it. And this was after he visioned for something else, and he was just like, I hate myself right now. And I was just like,
Should have respected
that's
it.
just how
Yeah.
it be. It's just like after this game, he was just like, "Did you top deck that?" And I was just like, "Yeah, technically." And then he was just like, "Oh, okay. Well, after this, you're gonna have to tell me how many Big Cindy you run in your list because
Wow.
I'm going to like, I just need to know." And so, yeah, it got me game 1, but unfortunately, like I said, we went into time game 2. But overall, like my theory behind Cindy was just that like it can be a little wonky in the blue-red matchup at times, but if like you're still hitting that line of being able to hit Cindy, like if you start out with Cindy instead of Daisy and then you go Cindy, Smee, because like when you're going blind, right, your ideal is that you're able to have Cindy plus Storm, because against anything that isn't red-blue, it ends up being really good, right? Like I think it was like Wochuk's article that was saying like your win rate against anything that isn't red blue when you have Cindy Storm and you're on the play is like you're winning that game 90% of the time. But yeah, just looking at it, like if you're able to hit Cindy 1, Smee 2, Lawrence 3, like Sven 4, restand Cindy, and they just don't deal with it to where you then shift Big Cindy on 5, can be just an absolute blowout. And so that was more or less my theory behind it. That, and I also just wanted to play my 2 DLC promo Big Cindy's. That's I love that. Love the subtle flex. Wish they could be foils, but we're saving that for hopefully next year if they continue doing those promos. If not, I wouldn't mind trading out for them.
Sick, man. It sounds like the deck treated you well, even in some of those tough matchups. Some cards I do
Yep.
want to highlight. Sven. Both you and
Sven.
Zach were on Sven. I enjoyed this card a lot. I want to give a shout out to the I forget his name. Person that got top he got top cut in DLC Seattle and top cut at DLC Vegas with Amber Steel. And he was playing Sven too. And
Boomy
Yep.
Jr.
There you go. There you go. Yeah,
Boomy,
and
yeah.
Boomy. You always keep forgetting Boomy's name. But Boomy also beat me in Swiss of this DLC Seattle event. He was playing
Ooh,
no aerial in his Amber Steel list, says he doesn't
yep.
need it. Just letting you guys know.
Hey, shout out to Big Game James. He's from our local area. He
Yes.
also made day 2 with no aerial amber steel.
Yep. Huge shout out,
Personally,
James.
guys, I think y'all are crazy, but
But
it probably feels a little bit better to play an aerial and not have to miss off of it ever because you don't play that card.
Yep. Never missing
But
off aerial feels nice. I think that's the reason why I refuse to play Amber Steel again, is because I hate whiffing off aerial. But now that I've been seeing some of these lists, I might have to hop back on and try it out or something.
Wheel of
yeah,
deal, baby.
my main issue with it is like going into Friday when I was playing, like I was on the Chiempo Nala ish kind of build just to test it out because I was just like, people are seeing success playing this Singer 5 Gaston, and I need to figure it out because I'd seen success not playing it, and I was just like, there's got to be something here. I get paired into 3 red blues out of my first 4 matchups on the Friday like competitive constructed side event, and my aerials over the course of like all 8 rounds of that, my aerials whiffed, I want to say like 70% of the time. I don't know what was happening while I was on that list, but man, am I glad that I made the pivot. And like just in testing that same night, I was just like, this list immediately feels 10 times better. And also, anytime I saw Sven, I was winning. Like, I don't know. Sven, as soon because Zach pitched it to me, he was just like, bro, you got to try this card out.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, sure, why not? And then I've been preaching it to everyone ever since. I actually signed a couple of people's Svens this weekend after
Love
they
it.
like play tested against me and stuff like that, which I've never like
Cool.
I've never signed cards for anyone before, so that was a pretty surreal feeling. But yeah, being able to sign like Demetrius from the Glemoneers, being able to, just a couple of the other goons that saw me teching it, that also saw success going into like Sunday side events with playing it in their Steel Song list was like, shout out to Alien Andy in our Discord who took it and saw success with it, that had me sign it as well. But yeah, overall, just a goated card. I kept telling people, it's just like when you have an aerial on board, it's basic, like aerial on board, 2 songs in hand. It's basically an inkable Naveen when you really think about it, right? Because you end on the same board state that aerial sings, Sven restand. You still have a 3/3 quest for 2. Then aerial just sings a whole new world, and then you're off to the races. And so yeah, like I said, anytime I saw Sven, I was normally winning the game unless I was in like dire top deck mode, and even then, Sven could be just a savior because it's just like, oh, if I have a Smee with 2 damage, okay, cool. Quest with Smee, Sven restands, Smee takes no damage, and now I have a 4 lore threat on board, so deal with it. But yeah, Sven was a goated card all weekend for me.
Nice. It sounds like it does a lot. I enjoyed the concept when I first saw it. Yeah, being able to basically use the same characters to sing song twice is really impactful. And like you said, if you have a singer already on board, you don't need Naveen to like dump a song from your hand for free. You can sing twice basically with the use of Sven, and that's inkable as well, man. And Sven quest for 2. He has a 3/3 body, which is just really hefty. And when you're talking about the aggression of having two quest characters back to back to back, having Sven in that curve, if you're going against an aggro deck, is crazy because you can quest with your Smee, play Sven, ready your Smee. Smee don't take damage, and now you just have a more stronger Smee to survive against some of these crazy decks. But Saucy, I know you don't have a lot of time, so let's go ahead and hop into Ink Table
I
because I
do want to
want.
mention though, you can ready opposing characters. So bodyguard characters, you can restand to challenge
Yeah.
other characters. Also making Diablo ready, meaning they can't draw off the whole new world you play. Super clean. Never came up. For me.
Yeah,
Super
never came up in the tourney, but in theory,
There's a lot.
that was a play line. I think against one Emerald Steel player, I did end up restanding their Diablo before doing a Let the Storm Rage on, so that they didn't get the draw from that.
Nice.
But,
Nice.
yeah.
They're probably like, I draw, and you're like, no. You're like, no.
Nope, not this time.
Love that. Saucy, I know you don't have the most time with us, so I do want to get some mulligans in with you on Ink Table, so let's go ahead and load that up real quick. All right, so we are up on Ink Table right here with Saucy's Amber Steel deck. I have an opening hand of Sven, Ariel, we have a Naveen, we got Strength of a Raging Goon, Queen Goons, the Cinderella Ballroom Sensation, and another Sven. What do you do first, guys?
Are you on the play or on the draw? And do you have
We-
what information
Yeah.
do you have about the opponent?
We're on the play. We're going blind. We don't know what they're playing, and it's and this is your bubble match to make day 2 at a DLC. So it's yeah.
Ooh,
So it's
yeah,
a one gamer.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and our opponent said if they lose game 1, they'll scoop. That is what happened. That is the stress we're
hmm,
under right
Hey,
now.
me too, man. Me too. All right.
Yeah, me
yeah,
too. Me too.
yeah. So I guess at least looking at this hand, going in blind, I, I do tend to be more of a fan when it comes to, you know, looking at the explosive version of the plays, right? To where, we had to keep, I feel like in this situation, you either want to keep the small queen or keep Cindy. That's at least like first line of thought. But at the same time, there is obviously the chance that you draw into Big Cindy. I think Naveen is the easy. Naveen and one of the Svens at least are like the easy, like we could just go for mulliganing those right away. But I guess curious on your opinions here as well, Zach.
So I mean, I know your deck list, and in hindsight, like I'm probably not keeping both Svens because I want to see that card later. I'm down to
Sure.
keep the Queen and the Cindy, giving me the ability to ink one or the other. Now, if I don't see a turn 2 play, I have to probably play this Queen. Um,
Yeah.
However, like Naveen Ariel is something I did keep in Vegas because I like the ability to play like Ariel and have this song that I know I can cast for free with Naveen on the following turn. But when you're looking at your hands and your ink, it's a little bit crucial. Since we're going in blind, I don't like to keep strength of the Raging Fire in case we're playing against red blue. I want to increase our chances of finding like the 2 quester, 1 drop, and 2 drops. Personally, it's something I know I would keep if I knew my matchup, but if I don't know my matchup, I'm gonna throw it back. Um, so
Yeah.
it's up in the air if you keep the Naveen and the Aerial. If you decide to keep the Naveen, you have to keep another form of ink. I would personally value the Sven in the deck rather than not. So I would probably keep Strength in Naveen if I had to keep Naveen. But if I were going to put back them, I would put them back together as well as a second Sven and just keep
Mhm.
Ariel, Cindy, and Queen and just go from there.
Yeah.
So just keep
I
put away
could I
both
could agree
Sven.
with that.
So put away both Sven then.
Yeah. It like there's consideration to be able to keep the strength because if you do end up going in against green, right, then it gives you the option where if you go turn 1 Cindy, if you don't draw turn 2, you still could potentially play queen, and then from there, I mean, there is also just a big likelihood that you draw into songs, right? Like you could still draw into your removal. And so I think, yeah, mulliganing those 4 is fine.
All right, so we'll put back those 4, and we see another Queen
Oh, and
Goons.
yeah, we're just
Couldn't have asked for a better
yeah,
card stop
we're
on my
just
deck.
we're just
Exactly what you were
cooking.
talking
And
about.
so
We ended up seeing the songs, like you said, and even a 2 drop. So a play on turn 2 potentially, or we could even just play Queen Queen on turn 2 if we really wanted to. Okay, so what do you
yeah,
do turn 1 going in blind?
going in blind, I would say the move here is just being able to ink one of the 1 drop queens and then being able to play the 1 drop Cindy. I think that's just again that's mainly just me, but Zach, I don't know if you had a different play line in mind.
So Bare Necessities isn't a card that I like to play on turn 2. I like to play it like a little bit later. Personally, if I find it early, I do ink it. And there is a world where I'd want to keep the queens, even though because in theory, let's say you draw ink and then let's say you draw ink again, you have a Storm Rage on to draw a card. You might see yourself playing both those queens on turn 2 as like your only like your best turn 2 play. Um,
Mhm.
so I would have probably inked the bear. But there is a world. It's more based on like a gut feeling. Like if I'm keeping this bare necessities, it's because I have a hard read of my opponent's deck. Also, you have to think about it like against Ruby decks, getting rid of the brawl for the aerial that you have on turn 3 can come up. So I can see
Yeah,
why keeping the bare necessities is a thought to have. It's not necessarily a bad decision. It's just more of a decision that you have to really lean on.
yeah. I feel like that's more or less like what I tend to play into, where it's just like, oh, I don't have a 2 quester, then cool, I hit a fishbone quill, I hit a brawl to where I know that my aerial's firing off. That at least it allows me to feel a little bit more comfortable because then, especially if I'm seeing a whole new world, then ultimately it doesn't matter. So we see a big tank, so likely going up against green steel. If not, it's steel song without a 1 drop, maybe, depending on what the list is. So yeah, drawing Big Cindy here. I guess there's the debate of, if we hold on to the Big Cindy to where like we just ink Queen, we hard cast Bare Necessities, or we sing. I guess we could sing Bare Necessities here and then be able to, but then it doesn't really give us much ink to work with is the only problem. So like in this scenario specifically, like without recognizing like Queen Shift or anything, personally I would be leaning more towards being able to probably ink Queen and then be able to hardcast Bear to be able to see what else my opponent is working with. But again, that's my thought process with it.
Um, yeah, like I'm just gonna say they're probably on green steel. Because if they're on amber steel and I have this kind of curve, I'm probably gonna do fine anyway. Um,
Yeah,
I'm
like
I'm curious though. I'm curious though because like because you play the shift queens, I just like having the ability to like play it if I top deck it available. Also,
mm,
like you're going into a turn where like the following turn after this you have aerial to play, and if you find whole new world, then you can sing whole new world, and if you find the shift queen, then you're really getting to do some damage there. So it's
yeah,
like I always play to my high rollouts when I play this deck because
mhm,
it's pretty much how you get the most rewarded when you kind of gamble a little bit. I mean, your deck name was "Let's Go Gambling," so
yeah, yeah. I do. It is a fun thing to do in terms of having the wheel, but yeah, I mean, really, it could be either the ink for Big Cindy, ink for Queen. But I think regardless, I would want to hardcast Bare Necessities personally because then you're saving at least one ink to where if you do draw dead, so if you do draw just a straight up uninkable, then you're still fine to be able to play your aerial because that's the main priority.
Yeah.
You don't ever. I've been in the situation too many times to where like I am feeling solid going into turn two, then turn three I draw like my fourth straight uninkable, and then I just can't play the game, and I'm like, cool, I guess I just lose.
Yeah.
So
So you
yeah,
gotta make
that's
sure
where
you have enough ink to
yeah.
spare.
So I think to Zach's point, we could just ink Big Cindy here and then be able to hardcast Bear.
Hardcast bear. So it's either hardcast bear or play the queen to draw the queen later. But I like the bear here too because we get to see what they're working with, and knowledge is really important. They don't even have a 2-drop. They have morph. Actually, they have morph. So they're gonna play morph next turn, which we can shoot down with storm. They have the storm of their
Yeah,
own, beast, double Ursula, hypnotize, and Prince John.
yeah.
So we're gonna get
Yeah,
this
so
storm out, right?
I would say in this position, like if they're trying to go for the John line, yeah, you're just wanting to hit the storm out of their hand and be able to quest because you know that they can't hit it. So
Hit them with a
going into next turn, they're likely just inking and then being able to play morph. What was
he
I
inked.
might have missed it. What was
They
inked?
inked a
The
beast
Beast
tragic
Tragic Hero.
hero because this is the AI,
Oh,
and they
okay.
will ink their best shift
Yeah.
their best shift characters, but
So
they weren't gonna
yeah,
shift it
here we just
anyways.
do what yeah, here we do what Steel like I always use this line just being like, okay, we're gonna do what Steel Song does and we're gonna sing with Cindy. Just being able to get that because you always want to draw cards before deciding anything else if you have the option to draw cards, right? So we know that we're
95%
taking
of the time.
yeah, pretty much. And so
Ooh.
drawing into Daisy here is actually
Kind of
kind of
mean.
wild
Pretty
in
mean. Pretty
this
mean in my
Ooh.
opinion.
yeah, in this matchup. But I think that the option here is likely to be able to. I'd probably say it's a hard choice of whether or not we want to play to the higher role because being able to keep Smee, like obviously the turn after you aerial, you could go Smee Daisy if you ink the queen. But regardless, it's either okay, we're playing one drop queen or we're playing Smee next turn. And so it's the question of which one do you want to ink. And so here, I think personally, I would probably want to ink the Smee just because we're trying again to see if we might be able to high roll. Because going into that next turn, we would, if we draw a shift queen, then if we draw shift queen plus a whole new world, then we're able to just kind of start playing things out, right? And so that's where again I would probably ink Smee in this situation and then be able to play aerial.
Inks me play aerial. Is there ever a world where you like ink queen and go me Daisy and just kind of ignore the aerial for now?
Um,
Not in this matchup.
there,
Not in this matchup. Too greedy or what?
yeah, not in this
You have the
matchup. You
Zeus.
want Yeah, especially if you have the Zeus in hand, and that is by far top priority
Mm.
because if they're taking their next turn to be able to play a 2-drop Ursula, which I doubt that they would, you know that otherwise you want to be able to prepare for that 3-drop Ursula coming down because if 3-drop Ursula hits the board and she goes unanswered, it can be bad news bears. And so
Mm.
yeah, I think in this situation, we're hitting aerial and then, see if we
Let's
can
see
go
it.
gambling.
We got a song.
Yeah, I mean,
We got a
strength
song.
That's
is
all you want. You don't want to
strength
miss.
is
It doesn't matter if it's
strength is
not a good
good.
song or not. You don't. It's okay. It's thinkable, and
Yeah,
that's what I like.
I
It's
mean,
that
worst case
thinkable
scenario,
songs are good.
yeah, if you like worst case scenario, right, you're 4 cards closer to being able to hard draw your whole new world, right? Like that's all it comes down to.
Ooh, so they inked
Oh, they just
Ursula and just
go for the
hard played hypnotize.
hypnotize. Okay, that's
So no, Saucy. Here's my thoughts on what I just choose for this card here. I just
yeah, yeah.
added a Strength of a Raging Fire. That's something my opponent knows I have in hand. If I discard that Strength of a Raging Fire, they don't know any cards in my hand.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that logic because then you still have the aerial for the Zeus, and as it stands currently, like Zeus is just a little bit more impactful.
So discard the strength. You're not worried about the discarding the inkable card.
No, no, not really. I mean, we don't have anything that really warrants the need for more ink at this point. And if we're gonna have to discard anyways, then it's fine. Yeah,
Pete is kind
Pete's
of
just kind of
mean.
nuts here because we could
So
hit
so here's my thought with
Wait,
the Pete draw.
give me one sec.
There's probably
Give me
nothing
one
you can
sec, Zach.
play.
Give me one sec.
like I straight
Okay.
up
All right, go ahead,
like
Zach. What were you
here
saying?
straight up. I think that or sorry.
Oh, go ahead and continue. Sorry, I started it again.
No, you're good. So I think here it's really like you could just play Queen, play Daisy, Quest 2, and then be able to just call it good there. Because like you hold the Pete and like Pete's just kind of a savior in this matchup at the end of the day because just like oh you want to set up 3-drop Ursula, I mean we have a Zeus for it so it doesn't really matter anyways. But holding the Pete just means oh like this deck just doesn't do a lot unless they have Cricky
Mm,
to be able to combat any sort of board based on them not being able to play actions right. If
okay.
they can't double sing with the 3-drop Ursula, she's kind of she's pretty mid. She's pretty mid, right?
Yeah, right now.
And
So,
so
sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but right now, so before we talked about this turn, my initial thought was like, oh, I can go Pete Daisy and just click Questin. But no. You're right. Right. You probably just save the Pete if they don't Ursula, or if they go like Prince John next turn. You save the Pete for that too, right? Because you're expecting them to go like sudden chill off the Prince John or something.
mhm,
Okay, I see, dude. Like, this is why I stick to Ruby M because like I'm like every time I would draw a card these past 4 turns, I've been thinking, oh, you just do this, and then you tell me, no, that's not what you're doing here. This deck,
yeah, no.
this deck's not easy to play.
You just like to in this matchup. You like to go fast, and you just like to keep them off of the board as much as
See,
possible.
that,
And
see, that's why I
so,
was
yeah,
thinking
being
that
able,
that's why I was thinking to play Smee Daisy so we can go extra fast. But no, but yeah, you're right. I think it's better to kind of just play into you're not gonna stick a single character on me because the Emerald Steel
right,
does get out of hand if they stick Prince Johns and Ursulas and stuff.
exactly. So yeah, just being able to play out Queen, play out Daisy, and then just call it good there.
So don't even ink, right?
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
you don't need to.
yeah, you don't need more ink to be able to play Pete, right? Like
Yeah,
that's all you need.
and
In
then
this matchup at least, like once you start drop especially if you could drop multiple Petes in a row, like there's just nothing that their deck can do really. But yeah, you just quest out with both and then we
and
just
pass.
keep running it's the you've activated my trap card play, right? Where it's just like I wanted you to swing with muses.
Okay, so
Okay, so we see both. Yeah,
mm,
so we do see the muses try and take that out, which is
I wanted
perfect.
to
Oh,
draw
oh.
Rapunzel so bad.
what what a draw.
Okay, so there is we have 2 options here now because we drew Naveen. We can't play Naveen because we don't
Yeah,
have enough ink, but we can ink our bear to play Naveen. But they did set up a Prince John, so I am kind of reading a discard card. From when we looked at their hand the first turn, I think we don't know any cards anymore because they inked all the cards that we saw earlier. Um,
yeah.
yeah, so let's see. What do we do here, guys? Are we getting rid of the muses? Are we using Naveen? Are we playing bear?
Well,
Mhm.
I know what I would do, and this is just because of like my multiple like I played too many games against this matchup to know what positions win me the game or not. I mean, I'm gonna quest with Daisy first to see what they get. It might
Right.
influence my decision making on what what I decide to do, just a little bit, but nothing too crazy.
Okay, so we're at 10 now.
Let's see what it
I
is.
got a
So
beast.
we're at
Ooh,
ooh
10.
that
okay.
that you're right.
Well,
Yeah, that's big decision. Big. That's a big
yeah.
information right there.
So let's count our lore now because this is where where we're gonna quest with two characters for sure, and we are going to contest the muses with our. I think we're gonna lean with the Pete. Yeah, I think we're gonna lean
Yeah.
with the Pete there.
We swing with Pete here.
Yeah, so we're gonna be able to get 12, right? And then we have one, two, three, four, five on turn. Yeah, so this is what I would probably do. I'd ink the bear, play the Naveen, Zeus down to Diablo, just put your characters in play, recognize the game state and the tempo you have in it, and understand that like you are closing the gap into winning the game.
Yeah.
This is what you want to do against Emerald Steel. You want to outpace them, and because of the amount of characters we have in play, they can't catch up even if they were to play like Diablo or sorry, Beast in this turn. Even a Tinkerbell right here wouldn't even do too much, in my opinion. Like you still can get and see you would have gotten
Yeah.
punished.
And you would have gotten
You
Ursula.
dodge the
We dodged
Ursula.
Ursula. We would have gotten
Yeah.
Ursula with that. Wow,
And
big
now you're
brain.
just at a point where you quest out and you play small Ursula, and
Quest
then you just win because
quest
there's literally nothing else that they can do.
quest with all
Because
glimmers.
you're questing up to 15,
You're at
19
19,
here.
and then you just have
Yeah.
lethal. Yeah.
Okay, and that was a good point, Zach. Count your lore because you counted ourselves up to 12, and then you realize, you know what? Next turn, if we play the Naveen, that puts us at 19, and you saw that from a turn away, and that's something that you need to be
Yeah.
able to do in Lorcana. With no matter what deck you're playing, you should be counting how much lore you can potentially have before you start your
Right.
turn. Think the way that was so cool. And same thing, because again, like one of those things where I saw them grab Beast, and I think, well, I have Zeus for the Beast, but it doesn't matter because we're just going for game. We're just going for game.
Yeah.
There is a
If they
thing.
play that beast, they're gonna lose the game.
There is such a thing
Yeah.
as going as
Like,
being too safe, right?
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think of it a lot like chess, right? Even though chess is more so a resemblance when it comes to like the mirror match, when it comes to something like this, the reason that keep chess in mind is because you think of the line. God, Rapunzel's insane here. Even though it's just game, but
I rolled my
like
eyes. I saw that Rapunzel.
yeah, no, like you think of chess and you think of the line like mate in X, right? So like mate in two, mate in three, mate in four. And that's pretty much what's always running through my head. And again, like relating back to the testing I was talking about earlier, where I was trying to decide like Robin Hood versus Queen lines, was most of the time I was thinking like, oh, this is mate in two, mate in one if they aren't doing anything to my board. And it was really just the same circumstance here, right? Where it's just like, oh, unless they draw big tink, and even like when you're thinking of playing to your out or like playing to their outs, right? It's just like there's literally nothing that they can draw in this situation that clears my entire board. And if I'm at 19, like it's just game, right? Like if there's literally nothing they could do, you know that they're not dropping a B prep, you know that they don't have like Medusa, like they could have Cricky, but Cricky doesn't do anything versus a standing character, right? So at that point it's just GG.
All right. Thank you so much, Saucy and Zach Stone, for teaching me a little bit more on how to play Amber Steel, and hopefully some viewers at home. I am not the best Amber Steel player. I am a good Lorcana player, but I do think that experience will triumph that if you're using a deck. So please be sure to practice your decks, my goons, so you can be as good as Saucy and Zach Stone here and see the lines, because it is a hard game. And I really like how you were talking about that chess reference. Whenever anybody asks me about like what's that card game thing you do, I just let them know it's basically chess, but we're using Mickey Mouse instead. And you know, being able to see I can win, I can secure the bag, and can secure this game within X amount of turns is so crucial, bro. When playing Ruby Amethyst, whenever I get to 13 lore, I'm like, I'm in goat range. I can literally win this game now if I just draw goats in the next 4 turns or something. When playing Amber Steel, you're in that range where you could just slap on Rapunzel's, Lawrence, Mies back to back to back, and each one might quest for 2, more than likely. So it can definitely
Yep.
get you there. Power of Amber Steel. What do you guys think about Amber Steel next set?
It's gonna be interesting. I mean, I know that our group has already been talking about like the new Mufasa, like, oh, are we, or not Mufasa, Simba, like the shift Simba that's coming out is just like, is that like, are we going 1-drop Simba, 2-drop Pride Lands, like 3 shifts, being able to sing a whole new world? I mean, he's uninkable, but also like being able to ready to where it's just like if you do 1-drop Simba, 2-drop Smee, and then be able to shift on 3 to where Smee re-readies at the end of your turn seems pretty broken, you know. So I'm very excited to see what Steel Song is capable of next set. We're gonna see a lot of color combinations, switching up how their play styles are. You know, like we've already talked about blue green with the new Basil. It, oh boy, we thought this card was bad. Now it's only getting worse from here. So yeah, I mean personally, I'm excited. I'm been a Steel Song player since set 1. Like doing it with Rockstar Stitch was always just such a fun thing for me. Being able to just Rockstar Stitch, sing a whole new world, and drop like 4 or 5 characters with Lantern on board. It was a great time, but also sucked having to play against Ruby Amethyst the entire time as well. But I enjoyed playing the deck ever since set 1. I've just kind of stuck with it, going through the Shimmering Skies, and you know, just wanting to continue to see what it can do going into set 6.
And yeah, no, I was gonna say the Amber Steel song deck takes I think a little bit of a different turn going into the next set. The Simba, I think, actually is way overpowered. Its stats are clean. 4/4 2 lore.
Yep.
What more do you want in an Amber or aggro deck?
It even rhymes. It's so good. It even rhymes.
Yeah. And the fact that we have the 1-drop Steel Simba, of course, it's important to remember that, like, yeah, you can ready your Smee, and that's pretty decent turn 2. I just like flooding the board with a bunch of 2 lore questers. Quest out, and you just shift, quest, ready them up. You're gonna win the game next turn. It's how I played my deck at Seattle with the Chen Po. In theory, I had plenty of games where I'd go Daisy turn 1. They had something to contest it. Okay, Smee turn 2. Lawrence turn 3. Quest. Sven ready 1. They can only deal with so many characters. Then you drop the Chen Po, quest out, and that's game. And it's the same concept that you don't have the bodyguard anymore. You just restand them. It's good.
Yeah, I'm not
I
gonna
mean,
lie.
and to think about it as well, it's just like in those cases where you brick, right? Playing that 1-drop, like if you're playing 1-drop Simba, cool. I get to filter a card out of my hand. Oh, I drew multiple Holy Worlds, and I'm not playing against green. Sick. One of them goes to the trash while I get a new card to my hand.
Yeah, I already like that
Seems pretty
1-drop
good.
Simba. I already enjoyed that 1-drop Simba. I think that 1-drop Simba is actually really powerful, especially when Steel continues to make really just bad cards that say draw 1, discard 1. You know, because they make so many terrible cards that have that extra ability. Like, it costs so much to draw 1 and discard 1, yet the 1-drop Simba does it on play. So that speaks a lot about how good that Simba actually is. It's a 1-cost character that filters a card for you. And there's not a lot of card filter in Lorcana outside of Sapphire, so to actually have that in Steel where it's basically free, actually kind of nice. So I'm heavily considering Amber Steel as one of the decks to play for Continentals, honestly, because yeah, that Simba looks really crazy. And if I can go back to a Rockstar Stitch, flood the board, draw a bunch of cards, why not, man? Set 1 was a blast.
Hey, you just hit Rockstar Stitch with having one of these on board. Just be able to start playing your 1-drop characters for free, and then you just draw a bunch of cards.
And you just
You
ready
never
them
know.
back.
You quest with the Simba and then restand them because they're exerted on Rockstar. There you go.
Unfair.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
Kind of nice.
Very strong.
Hey,
Get your
we're gonna be
Rockstar Stitches ASAP.
Yep. No, it's next set. I'm very like every set. I've just been excited to see how the meta develops, and like it's such a joy to be in an infancy of a card game, especially grew up playing Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, and like Magic the Gathering, and now it's just like we get to be there for mine's hanging up on my wall over here, but like
my third one's at the booth. I'm ready.
Yeah, so it's an exciting time to be a Lorcana player, Lorcana Goon. Even if you haven't already, make sure to join the Discord. We're always active, always live. People are throwing rulings questions. funny memes about about the current state of the game, the cards, etc. And so it's always a great time to be in the Discord.
And planning meetups to hang out after DLC events, and that's honestly that was so awesome.
Yeah, that
it
was
was
awesome.
a great time.
Yeah, thanks again, Saucy, for all the effort you put into helping the Lorcana Goons community out in the Discord. I genuinely appreciate it. I know Zach does too, and I know a lot of people do, man. Shout out Togepi, Alien, Andy, and anybody else I'm forgetting that we hung out with in Seattle. Literally like confirming that through the Lorcana Goons Discord, like y'all had places to link up and even stay and book hotels with and stuff like that. Like means the world to me.
Literally.
I think it's awesome, man. And if you guys are joining the Lorcana game and you feel like you don't have a place yet or an online social circle to play test with and get to know and just learn a little bit more about the game, join our Discord. I may not be the most active in it, but I try and be as active as I can. I know Zach definitely is, and we've done some good stuff, man. The Discord helped me build my blue-green deck, and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed this format because of that. And now that we're heading on to set 6, we all got some spicy stuff to brew, so I can't wait for that. Saucy, do you have any social media that you want me to plug? Are you trying to start a content creation anytime soon or anything?
Dude, the amount of time that I've just considered being able to start up my own channel or anything has been a huge debate. It's just, man, a matter of time, honestly. Like when, you have work, you have the card games, you have like animals to be able to take care of, just have my wife. And so, like, if anything, just huge shout out to her for being so supportive of everything that I've been able to do with the card game. If it wasn't for her and her support, I don't think I would be able to continue having that positive headspace that I do going into events, because after any given round, I'm always like dropping her a message, just being like, I just got my match 2-0, and she's just like, that's great. So you won, right? And I'm just like, yeah. So it's always funny. Like I've tried getting her into it a little bit, and like the Illumineer's Quest was an amazing product to be able to, just have it be, you versus the big bad evil, like the BBEG for the abbreviation. But no, nothing currently. I would say just feel free to join the Discord. I'm always like, I tell it to pretty much everyone I meet. I'm always happy to talk theory. If I have the availability, I'm always trying to test, because I always just want to know like what's good with the Lorcana meta, which like when Pixelborn was out, that was a huge thing for me, being able to get testing in on there. And so now we see other platforms coming into the mix, being able to have rank ladders and stuff like that. So just continue to excite, and just really excited to stay on that journey. And yeah, nothing at the moment, but if I do, we'll be able to collab if anything. So the opportunity, like I said, we're just going to be doing a lot of testing going into the start of set 6, and I mean, I'm going to be on that wagon, because even though the competitive journey is like not technically ended with the DLCs, right? We're still in a space that I still have that competitive headspace, because even if I'm not currently planning on it, if the opportunity arises, I want to be ready. So I'm still going to be doing whatever I can to be able to test, especially, helping you out, Kevin, being able to make sure you're prepped and ready to go to be able to take down the whole thing, be able to get your invite to Worlds. And even though we don't know what that looks like quite yet, I'm figuring, it's assumedly if you win nationals, you go to Worlds, right? Like that's generally how that goes. So yeah, just making sure that you're feeling prepped and ready to go, being able to take down the whole thing for the Goons community. But yeah, no, otherwise, I mean, can't thank you guys enough for having me. I know it's been kind of a long time coming. Being able to see you guys at both Vegas and Seattle was a huge highlight for me. Like I said, just being able to go in between rounds, sharing the hype between like getting games and, just continuing upon that journey. Very excited for the next competitive season.
Same. This LCQ or bust for me, unfortunately, but it's gonna happen. Being very close to Disneyland, I will be there, and I will be at Worlds regardless of whether I'm competing in the event or not. It should be a fun time. And in anytime any of you goons that are listening still see Kevin and I, please reach out and say hi. We got stickers, we got other swag for you. Lots more to come. We had our new jerseys that we introduced that weekend. So this is the official Goon Squad team jersey. You catch any of us wearing at these events wearing them, definitely some say hi and show us some love.
If you guys want to buy some of these cool Goons shirts, they're available in the link in the description below. Huge shout out for Saucy for wearing those and everyone else who was wearing them throughout the weekend. That was really awesome to see. Yeah, I can't wait for set 6. If you guys have any opinions on what you think you're going to play for set 6, leave them in the comments below, or how you would change your Amber Steel deck for set 6 coming. You've been watching the Quest with a Guest podcast, a place where you can lore for more, according to Zach Stone. Hope you guys had an awesome week, and we'll see you guys at the next one. Remember to And be sure to remember to stay tuned to Lorcana Goons for more.